Hello there, I'm Catherine Nicholson. Welcome to our Talking Europe debate on France 24 from the European Parliament in Brussels. Now, believe it or not, it is coming up to 5 years since the referendum in the United Kingdom that eventually took the country out of the European Union. I'm sure our viewers need no reminding of what an arduous process the negotiations were, resulting in an 11th-hour agreement on their future relationship on Christmas Eve of 2020. Well, since then, the deal has since come into force with big changes for some, like commercial fishing fleets on both sides and Brits with second homes in the EU, to name just two examples. Well, now that we're a few months in, we wanted to check up on how Brexit is bedding in with two members of the European Parliament. We have with us a French MEP from Emmanuel Macron's centrist Renew Europe group, Pierre Carleskind. Hello there.
Hello.
And you're also the president of the Fisheries Committee,
Absolutely.
I ought to point out, very pertinent to Brexit. And from Germany, an MEP from the AfD, or Alternative für Deutschland Party, which is part of the Identity and Democracy group, Gunnar Beck. Hello there.
Hello.
And I would say that you've lived and worked for a long time in the UK.
I have indeed, yes.
Good knowledge of both sides of the story. So let's come to just the big overarching question. Members of the European Parliament actually signed off on the last step in the Brexit process just a couple of weeks ago, ratifying the deal by a big margin. Pierre Carleskind, 660 in favour, 5 against, 30 or so abstentions. Sounds like MEPs are quite satisfied with this deal.
Well, satisfied. I don't know if it is exactly the good word. The fact is that the options are yes or no. Or we know that no would mean hard Brexit. And this is precisely what we've tried to avoid during the 5 years. I mean, 5 years during the first negotiation, but the first Brexit deal, and then this trade and cooperation agreement. No hard Brexit, because it would be the worst thing for EU and for UK. That's why we have voted so largely.
Gunnar Beck, is it a good deal?
It's an imperfect deal from both parties' perspectives, therefore probably a good deal. It's a deal where both parties had to compromise. If you allow me very briefly, the EU started with maximum positions, say, on ECJ jurisdiction, dynamic regulatory alignment and maximum fishing rights. They got some of these things to some extent, but certainly not all they wanted. And the UK, again, had to make some compromises. That was, in a sense, the best possible outcome.
Well, let's look at one particular recent consequence of the Brexit deal that's really made headlines in the last couple of weeks, a sort of fishing war, we could kind of say, very brief though, around the Channel Islands, Jersey, Guernsey, Alderney, among the Channel Islands with British Crown dependencies. Now, this was a dispute over fishing rights. France, one of the ministers, threatening to cut off the electricity supply to these islands amid this row. Pierre Carleskind, is this the relationship that the EU wants with the UK moving forward?
No, I must tell you something. In 2020, during the last plenary here in the European Parliament, I said something simple. Let's try to avoid a kind of forever negotiation between EU and UK. But the fact is that we are in this forever negotiation, because the basis of this agreement is the good faith of both parts. But one has to admit that good faith is not what is the best thing from the British government. There is no good faith, because we are just asking the British government to apply the agreement, to give the licenses, to negotiate on quota. I mean, we are talking about fisheries. But the fact is that the answers we have are just not in the agreement. So that is why it is so difficult right now. We have more than 5 months after the signature, and we are still waiting for honest response from the UK government.
Gunnar Beck, the UK government not showing good faith?
Well, I think we've got to be specific here. It's not so clear to me to what extent the UK is, in fact, in the wrong or not showing good faith on fisheries. It's part of the agreement that fisheries quotas will be gradually reduced, starting, I believe, in July. that's unfortunate in some respects for some continental fishermen, but it's also got to be understood that with Britain having left the European Union, European fishermen cannot expect to catch quite as many fish in UK waters as they did before. Now, then there is the issue of Northern Ireland, where it's arguable that the British are indeed arguing or asking for an adjustment of an existing treaty clause that's possible.
Now, this is talking about the Northern Ireland Protocol, where the British government is accused by the European Commission of wanting to breach the original treaty and therefore break international law. We can say they have begun some legal proceedings. Pierre Kind, this sounds like a lot of animosity, again, from the get-go. Is this a temporary phase of both sides trying to show that they're serious? You know, can we expect this relationship to improve? Is legal action the right path to take?
Well, it's been 5 years that I am trying to find some rationality in the UK government decisions, and I can't find some. And what I understand from this is simply that they perfectly know that Brexit is a catastrophe for the British economy. This will lead to a drop in their GDP. This already is leading to a drop in their exports towards the European Union, minus 70% of exports on the first month of this year. And the
that
idea
has recovered the export level.
This is good news, but from the beginning, it's still a catastrophe, and you still have some troubles on the borders. And the fact is that Boris Johnson has to find someone to blame, and as usual, his favourite responsible for everything going bad in UK is European Union. This is just not acceptable, and we are not going to accept that.
What do you make of that response, Pierre?
I think catastrophe is a strong word. I mean, we've been talking, people have been talking about an imminent catastrophe ever since the Brexit referendum. It's not happened. It's not happened immediately after the referendum. It's not happened in the admittedly very protracted negotiation period. We've seen a downturn in exports, quite a dramatic one of late, but I think in large measure due to COVID. And as you said, exports have recovered.
But
then there is a final point.
Not to the same level. They've recovered from that 70% drop.
But nothing has recovered to the same level. It's not, I admit, entirely clear whether they will very rapidly recover to the pre-COVID level. But let's be fair, it's not only Britain that's currently in something of an economic downturn as a result of the crisis. The EU, and the EU is to a far greater extent. I mean, I live in London still and go back a fair number of weekends. London is open again. The economy is recovering a lot faster than in the EU.
Well, you said recently that the EU is, quote, finished financially since the pandemic. That sounds quite a strong statement. What do you mean by that?
I don't think I quite said that. I think the COVID crisis has been ruinous for the EU. Many other things have been ruinous for the EU. And I think it is in perpetual crisis, which eventually may finish it off. I think that's what I said or should have said.
Well, in terms of trade, just zoning in on those figures, the British Office of National Statistics says that trade levels between the EU and UK fell by 23% across the first quarter of this year, since the deal came into force. Meanwhile, the UK's trade with non-EU countries was down by only a fraction of that.
Yeah.
It sounds like that discrepancy must be down to Brexit.
I mean, your figures are the good one. You just show that this is collapsing towards the European Union, which is the first partner. I mean, half of the exports of United Kingdom are towards our European Union. And just think about something. It's just that controls at the UK borders are not still in place for the direction from EU to UK. Just imagine in October when it will be the case. Can you just imagine for these companies in UK waiting for the goods they need for their production, for the UK consumers waiting for the vegetables, for all the things they buy usually? This is the second phase of the Brexit, and they are not still living there.
Gunnar Beck, perhaps more problems on the horizon because there have been grace periods for certain things, as Pierre Carleskind suggests.
Yes, well, Mr. Carleskind is arguing very passionately, and I give him that, of course, exporting Brexit will have some disruptive effect to mutual trade relations, undoubtedly. However, I think you cited very interesting figures, namely that UK exports to the rest of the world didn't collapse to anything like the extent to which they collapsed British exports declined
will they
in relation
start growing
to the...
soon? Will they start growing? Because that was the big hope of Brexit.
I think they will, but I think there's another point no one's highlighted so far, namely that the EU was the one large region which almost consistently went into lockdown, except for Sweden. The EU has been affected by COVID far more than anyone else. As a result of the calamitous downturn in the economy here, you would expect imports from the UK to fall.
Well, on that, Sweden currently has one of the worst infection rates per capita in the European Union, but that's obviously a discussion for another programme. Just one last word, Pierre Carleskind. Do you think relations are going to improve, very briefly?
I hope this must improve. This must improve. I mean, when I talk about the British, I always say our British friends, because they are our friends. We cannot stay in this mud between our countries.
All right, thank you both very much for taking part in the programme. Hope to speak to you again soon. Hope to see you again soon as well here on France 24.